What's up, single players? J. Scott Brown here for Only Single Player. Today's topic of discussion is none other than the non-game game fallacy. First question obviously would be, what the hell is the non-game game fallacy? How does the idea actually relate to defining what a video game is? And finally, is there any point to try to answer the question, what is a video game, with such certain objectivity? The question of what is a video game tends to be treated by a large chunk of gamers as a matter of utter importance. Obviously, it's an intriguing and vibrant discussion to be had. It's arguably one of the most significant questions about our industry. However, I can't help but feel somewhat frustrated at times as a result of the complete disregard some people have towards games that don't meet their video game criterion. For the uninitiated, the non-game game fallacy relates to video games that are incredibly simplistic by design at a mechanical level. There's usually not much depth to the actual gameplay, and the story is usually delivered in unorthodox and unique ways. There's normally not much challenge for the player, nor is there any way for them to fail or reach a failure state, i.e. game over screen or dying horribly and restarting at a checkpoint. They tend to not have the usual things which typify games, including enemies which are an actual threat, a clear scripted path by which the story takes place, and challenges which require skill and something to be achieved in order to progress. And they are generally the target of ridicule by a large chunk of gamers, using terms like virtual experiences and interactive fiction as pejoratives, ways of sidestepping the label of video game. The most recent release to reinvigorate this debate is Sam Barlow's Her Story. In Her Story, the player uses keywords to search for short video clips derived from a series of interviews with a woman from a cold case back in the 90s. It's a game that has no clear direction. It sits the player down in front of a computer screen and does nothing more than invite them to delve deeper. After viewing enough clips, the game does little more than ask whether or not you're satisfied, and then you're done. Her Story has no start. It very loosely has what could be described as an ending. However, I thoroughly enjoyed it nonetheless. There's something about having no direction, no challenge, and no clear rules that make these types of games special. Video games at their core, in a contemporary understanding of the medium, are active forms of fiction that require the audience to be invested. And sure, there's no real challenge to Her Story. You don't lose lives, and the game doesn't take away points for doing the wrong thing, but that's why they're so compelling. It's almost like an interactive playground. You can choose to go on the slide, play on the swings, or hang about on the monkey bars. Or do all three, in whatever order you want. You get to dictate what you're doing and how long you're doing it for. And it's that connection with the environment which is reflected in games like Her Story, which is why it's incredibly inaccurate to equate these mechanically simple games to movies. The experience that players get in Her Story is unique to them. You simply can't do Her Story the movie, or the television show, or even the book, which is why it bothers me when people go to such efforts to diminish its quality by advocating for it not to be called a video game. In my opinion, Her Story is an example of a video game in its purest form, requiring a level of engagement and interactivity that's significant and manifesting an experience that's unique to the player as a direct result. And whether you agree or disagree, it's still a marvelous and deep piece of interactive fiction. This isn't to say either that all unique indie games that are mechanically simplistic are just guaranteed to be brilliant. Games like Dear Esther and 4PM that have very little depth and no real significant level of player involvement are of poor quality. They're not exempt from this rule just because they do the indie, little, mechanically simplistic type thing. But they're a far cry away from superb games like Journey, Gone Home, and PT. These are titles that are very limited at a mechanical level, but are marvelous experiences regardless due to the level of engagement required from players, the depth and complexity of the story, and ultimately the connection which players establish with the world as a direct consequence of the very little direction they are given, which implores players to create a purpose and project it onto the game's universe, making that purpose that much more impactful when it is ultimately achieved in the game world. I'm not trying to champion the argument that these titles should be called games, I'm underscoring the fact that it's simply irrelevant. The idea that the term game needs only to be reserved for the elite forms of interactive fiction that have challenges and game over screens seems trivial. If you're not a fan of these mechanically simplistic titles, that's absolutely your prerogative. For the sake of transparency, consumers are entitled to have all the information at their disposal about what these types of games entail before they purchase them. But the very notion that we must alienate these mechanically limited titles from the definition of a video game and behaving like the title of game actually means anything is utterly frivolous. Ultimately, you can call them virtual experiences, interactive fiction, or even some of them walking simulators, but it doesn't diminish the fact that they are adored by a significant amount of people who love video games. Ladies and gentlemen, those are my thoughts on the non-game game fallacy. I see the discussion on a wide variety of forums. It's a very controversial topic to have, so if anyone disagrees with me out there, if you have any feedback you want to give, reach out to me on Twitter, leave a comment in the comment section below or on onlysp.com. I would love to hear your feedback, and I don't want to dissuade that in any way. I'm really open to alternative views, and I really want to engage with that discussion because I realize this is a very open debate, and I have a pretty definitive opinion on myself, so I'd love to hear some alternative views that would help broaden my perspective. But ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and like it if you enjoyed it and got something out of it. That's always good. It helps me out a bunch, and we really love the support. But ladies and gentlemen, that's me done for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.